Welcome to Baker Makes It. My name is Zach Baker, and in this video, we're going to be installing a RoadActive suspension system on my 2024 GMC Canyon. Now this is my second GMC Canyon that I've owned, the other one being a 2016 with the diesel in it. This is a 2024, it has the TurboMax 2.7 liter in it, and it's a great truck, but I do tow with it. You can see behind me, we've got our 1970s Holiday Rambler travel trailer. Currently working on restoring that. And I expect that's going to be in the 6,000 to 7,000 range. So we're talking about a pretty good amount of weight. This truck's rated to tow about 7,700 pounds, but I also have things in it like extra toolboxes and extra gear. So what we're trying to do is beef this up a little bit so that we can run right at capacity, or maybe even a little over at times, to make sure that this thing is not going to be super squatted in the back and we have a nice steady path down the road. Now on my last Canyon, I added the Old Man Emu rear leaf springs, and they have different levels of weight upgrades. And so I had kind of their mid-range, which assumes you're carrying 600 pounds extra at any given time, which is probably about right for me. They have not officially said they work for this truck, but I decided to go another route. The reason I did those before was because my leaf springs had actually flattened out. So this RoadActive suspension is a little different. So let me show you what it is, and then we'll get this thing on the truck. Okay, so the RoadActive suspension is a little unusual in that it's a coil spring that goes over the leaf spring. You can see it's got a hook here, and then it's got this other mount here, and it comes pre-assembled like this. The box literally came with two of these, some new shackles, some instructions, and some shims. And so the idea here is kind of twofold. One, it's not engaging until it needs to. As the leaf spring is flattening, this is going to have tension under it. And two, the behavior of a leaf style spring versus a coil style spring like this is completely different. And I've never used these before, but what I have read and what other people have said is that that difference of style really kind of mellows out the ride, and it helps the truck absorb bumps in addition to providing some extra support when it needs to. So let's get the truck up in the air. Let's get the wheels off. We're going to get this thing chocked first so it doesn't go rolling on us, and then we will get these things on the truck. Before we do all that, we're going to hook this up to my camper, put a little bit of weight on it, and just see what the distance is between the top of the wheel and the bottom of the wheel well. The camper's not fully built out right now. I'm going to say it probably weighs 4,000 pounds. So we're probably only talking about a 400 or 500 pound tongue weight. So this isn't going to be a dramatic test, but I do want to see what's the difference before and after. All right, the truck's backed up. We're going to measure the wheel well gap before and after we put the weight of the trailer on it. Okay, from the wheel well to the front edge of the tire, just picking a consistent spot so I can measure it. We're at exactly 6 inches. Let's go ahead and lower the weight onto the truck and see where it is then. Now, keeping in mind, I would never actually tow with this hitch. I'm going to be using a weight distributing hitch that wouldn't put this much tongue weight, or maybe it would, but it wouldn't be doing it quite in this way. So this is kind of an extreme example, but this is a lighter trailer. We're at exactly 5 inches now, so we lost an inch. Honestly, not too bad. I'm going to check the front just for kicks. The front is 5 1/4, so it's actually not bad. We're actually fairly level, even with probably 300 plus pounds in toolboxes and tools, and the weight of this trailer on here, which is unknown. Anyway, let's go ahead and get the suspension in, and then we'll do the same measurement and see where we're at. Before we get into this, I want to look at the tools that we needed. This ended up being a little more than I thought. I just kind of grabbed these as I went, but I'll show you guys before we get started. We've got the instructions. The kit included a wide 2mm spacer and a thin 1mm spacer. This is the one we used. I've got a 10mm hex wrench, 12, 19, 21, and 22 wrenches, and then we've got a if we had another 22 wrench, that would be easier. I had to use my adjustable wrench. I've got a 3/8 ratchet with a 22mm on it, and then I've also got a 1/2 inch ratchet and a 1/2 inch torque wrench that had, let me just confirm, had a 21mm on it. That's for our shackle bolts. And then I also ended up using a cheater pipe to get off those shackle bolts as well. Otherwise, you just need your jack stands, stuff to take the wheels off, and I ended up needing the tools that were in the truck to lower the spare tire as well. Okay, before we jack the back of this up, we want to make sure that we chock the front wheels. We want to do this because the front wheels are free spinning, even in park. So we lift the back wheels off the ground, the truck could move otherwise. All right, full disclosure, I already put one of these on because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing before I showed you. So this is our part here, and I know this is the driver's side because of where this bolt is. It says in the instructions the one that's 4 holes back is the driver's side. We've also got our shackle straps here, and that's going to be our first step. We're going to go to the back of this leaf spring, which is behind this wheel well, and we're going to remove the shackle bolts. There's not really going to be much tension here because of the way the jack is supporting this. I've got the jack underneath the differential. The weight of the truck is on these stands, but the weight of the differential and the suspension is just barely sitting on the jack. I raised it maybe a ½ an inch, and that's going to allow us to get this installed right. So let me show you these shackle bolts that we got to take out. Okay, so looking from the back of the truck, we follow this leaf spring back. We'll see the back eye of the leaf spring, which is this. And then this is our shackle. This is 2 pieces that are connected with this center section, and we're going to remove both of those bolts and replace it with the ones that came with the kit. We're going to start by removing these bolts. This is a 21 millimeter. And yep, I have to use a little bit of an extension pipe, a breaker bar on my ratchet to get this off. Now, I just kind of test the tension here to make sure this isn't going to spring back at me. And there really is not a lot of tension. So I took the top bolt out. This bottom one, however, is a little challenging because of the spare tire. So we could remove the spare tire. On the other side, I was able to flex the spring up and get the bolt out. I'm not sure that's going to work here, though. Okay, we've got the bolts out and the shackle out. And so before we go reinstalling this, we need to take this whole unit and place it on top of the leaf spring. Okay, this entire unit is now sitting on top of the leaf spring. You can see the curved part right here. We haven't attached the other end, that's fine. We just have to make sure this is in before we reinstall these shackles. And so now, to avoid the issue we just had, we're going to install the bolts from the outside here instead of the inside. And we'll be able to line this up a little easier. We are going to have to lift up on the leaf spring a little bit, which is fine. And then we'll get our other shackle on the inside here as well. A little bit more lifting and twisting on the spring to get this installed. From there, we'll go ahead and start our nuts, and we have to torque this to 60 foot-pounds, which, as I'm putting these nuts on, I'm realizing I probably shouldn't have put that spare tire up yet because that torque wrench is not going to fit. So down we go with the spare tire again, and then we'll get our torque wrench on here and get these torqued down to 60. All right, shackle bolts are in, and this is how this is sitting now. So it's just sitting directly on top of the leaf spring, and it's just floating here. It's not attached. So in order to attach it, we got to take this out. So this is just finger tight. We're going to loosen that, and then we're going to relocate this down underneath the leaf spring, and then that will give us a little bit of, not a little bit, that will give us what pulls on this to allow us to tighten this. My words aren't making sense, but you get the idea. Okay, so the issue we're running into now is that this threaded rod is not giving us enough length on this to get this bolt back into the hole that we need to here. So part of the instructions were to loosen this when you unbox it, and I think the reality is I just didn't do it far enough. I really don't understand why one side wants you to go in the very front hole and now this side wants it in this fourth hole, but I'm going to assume that it's for a good reason, and we'll just keep adjusting this until we have enough clearance to get this in. Now it says in the instructions that this needs to be tight against the bottom of the leaf spring, which makes sense because it's pulling tension back as the spring tightens this way. So it's fairly tight right now. I am gonna just take a little bit of that tension back out just to help me hold it here while I tighten this. And now to tighten this, I've got an Allen key that fits that bolt. I do not know what size it is. The biggest one I own, if that helps. And then I've got a 19mm wrench on the back side here, and we're just going to start cranking this down. Ratchet probably would have been a better choice here, but there wasn't room on the other side, so I already have the wrench out. You could definitely fit a ratchet on this side. Okay, so now comes the adjustment portion of this. We're just about done, believe it or not. So the next part of this is to tighten this threaded rod into the coil spring. And the way they recommend doing that is taking a wrench, putting it on the cap screw on the end of this. This is a 12mm. And then it's not visible right here, but on the very back side of this, where the threaded rod comes through the bracket that loops around the leaf spring, there are two doubled up 18mm nuts, and I chose a 3/8 ratchet because there's it's a little tight back here. So a 3/8 ratchet with a 22 mil on it is enough to start putting some tension on this. And now before we do this, we want to look at the where it loops around up here and make sure that it is centered on the spring side to side, and it is. And now I'm running into an issue here where I can't actually fit my ratchet in on this side because the angle is just so different from the other side, which is interesting. But again, it's a result of the way they're suggesting to put that bolt in a different hole. And I guess it's because of the way the axle torques, maybe, and maybe that's the reason. I don't fully understand. It doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe it's to avoid this being too close to this. In any case, I can't get that in there. So I think what we're going to do is instead double up these two nuts here against each other. And then we're going to use a wrench here. So I'm going to hold on to this 12 mil, and I'm just going to start tightening. And now we're looking for this to create enough tension for the gaps in the springs to start to open. And I'm just noticing my nuts are not tight. So let me grab another wrench and we'll tighten them against each other. I do not own two 22 mil wrenches, so we're going to use the biggest adjustable I've got here and just tighten these against each other so that we can use this. If you can get to the back with the wrench, the socket rather, it's going to make your life about 1,000,000 times easier. But this will work fine too. So this left hand is holding the spring from spinning, and then the right hand is tensioning the spring. And now as we do this, we're looking for that gap to start showing up in between the coil springs. You're going to start seeing light through it. This kit comes with two spacers that we basically use as a feeler gauge to keep an eye on that gap. The smaller of the spacer is 1 millimeter thick. The bigger one is 2 millimeters. And they say that the 1 millimeter spacer adds about a 25% increase in your suspension's abilities, and the bigger one adds about 40%. Now, because I'm not towing a lot right now and my camper's not done, we're gonna go for the smaller option, which is the 25% increase, which is the white spacer. So I still don't even see light through here, so I'm just gonna keep tightening here, and I'll check back in once it's time to start checking that spacing. All right, we're there. It just barely fits in there. I went a couple past that on the other side, so I'm gonna do the same thing here. All right, now this is tensioned. So then our final step is gonna be to take these nuts and tighten them one at a time against here so this doesn't back out. And now because I tension these to each other, we're first gonna have to break them free. And we're just gonna spin the first one down, tighten it up, and then do the same for the next. All right, last step is to look everything over, make sure everything's tight, put our wheels back on, take this for a test drive. All right, before I completely hide all this, you can see that's in the 4th hole there. Everything is looking good. I checked all our bolts. That loops back over. And let's take a look at the passenger side quick. Same thing here, except you can see the bolts in the 1st hole. Again, I have no clue why they do that, but same thing here. We're all set. Here's one more view of those shackles, and you can see the RoadActive suspension wrapped around the top of the leaf spring eye. Okay, measuring to the same point, we went from an even 6 to an even 7 inches. So we gained about an inch of height on that. Let's go ahead and back the truck up, and then we'll see how it is with the weight on it. Okay, the weight's fully on the truck now. Definitely dropped. I'm really curious to see. Interesting, so we're at 5 1/4. So we lost 1 1/4 instead of 1 inch before. That's really interesting. So it made the back of the truck higher, but then it actually settled more. So I'm not sure what to make of that. I may need to increase the tension on those springs when I start towing with this, but that's really odd. I would have thought that would have been a smaller difference. Now that being said, you know, from a balance perspective, we're at like, 5 3/4 at the back. And I would say we're looking a lot more level now. At the front, we're at about 5 1/2. So regardless of the drop, it's more balanced here than it was before. So I guess at this point, I'm gonna take it for a drive and see how it rides. And then I'll have to play around with it some more as I start towing with this some more. I may make that decision to increase it up to the 40% increase by putting some extra tension on those springs. But that's surprising that it dropped 1 1/4 now versus 1 inch before. Make of that what you will, but we're gonna take it for a spin here and we'll see how it does without a trailer. And then one day we'll see how it does with one. But today is not that day. All right, I just got back from a test drive, and the skepticism you might have sensed in my voice as I was measuring that is completely gone. I am so impressed with how that thing handles. It's gone from being a very typical leaf spring truck that when you hit bumps, especially while turning, that back end will just kind of hop a little, and it just doesn't do it anymore. I've never driven a leaf spring truck that's as controlled as that. And it kind of acts like if you've ever upgraded a rear sway bar in a vehicle where it causes the vehicle to oversteer a little bit more. It has that sort of handling characteristics. So as you turn, it's feeling more planted. The body's not rolling as much. Just blown away by the way it goes over bumps though. And ultimately, this added a rake back in the truck where the rear of the truck is slightly higher than the front, whereas before it was very close to being even. And as someone who uses their truck to do truck stuff, I prefer a truck with a little bit of rake. I don't have to worry about putting weight in the bed and have it being nose up. That affects braking, and I'm just not a fan of the squatted truck look that so many people are going for these days. So to me, that's a positive. To others, it might not be. I don't think I will up the spring tension to that 40% increase, because I think any more rake and it might start looking a little odd without also increasing the front, which I'm not looking to do. So unfortunately, I don't have a trailer heavy enough to really give this a good try with that. My camper is still in process and it's not able to be towed right now. So maybe I'll do a follow-up video down the road when I have some weight on it, but my initial impressions are excellent. And I see why these things get so many positive reviews, even unloaded. That's just wild to me. Like I think just that improvement is actually worth it just for the comfort level, even if you don't tow. I suspect that while towing, it's going to be an even bigger improvement. So all in all, it took me about 2.5 hours to put these on start to finish. That's with filming. I probably could have done it in about 2 hours with no interruptions and not having to move the camera around. So I would recommend these for sure. Once I get some weight behind it and give it a fair test with that, I'll follow up with another video probably, but pretty easy install. Would highly recommend this product. Well, it took me so long to edit this video. I had a chance to haul some mulch behind me there. I got a pallet of about 50 bags of mulch, and they're probably somewhere in the 2,000 to 3,000 pound range on a 2,700 pound trailer. And I had some plants in the back, and I had my wife and 2 kids in it, and toolboxes full of stuff. So I think we are about at max capacity on the truck, if I had to guess. And I took this little video last night at Lowe's real quick when I was picking it up. The truck handled it really, really well. Ultimately, the limiting factor was the truck's power over the suspension. So really happy with how it pulled. Everything was super stable. Didn't feel like I was going to bottom out or anything like that. So highly recommended. If you're not already, I would recommend you subscribe to my channel, Baker Makes It. I do a lot of stuff to my Canyon and will continue posting videos. I also do a lot of projects like this camper behind me here. I'm restoring a 1970s Holiday Rambler, and that project's really coming together. It's been a fun one. So love to get into different automotive projects and projects around the house. So if you could subscribe to my channel, Baker Makes It, I would seriously appreciate it. See you on the next one.